This tutorial is going to be a prerequisite for the pond ecosystem tutorial, as the principles will be same, but this is a more simplified version of that one. So we are going to make an ice cream sandwich in this one using Bezier curves. So let's start by adding a curve object. Press Shift A, curve, and then Bezier to add a Bezier curve. Press 7 to go into the top view mode and press tab to go into the edit mode. Now you can select any vertex by clicking or dragging and then press R to rotate it to make a simple shape. Then press E to extrude and then press R to rotate and then press E to extrude again and R to rotate to make a simple shape. Or what you can do is you can use this draw tool and draw a freehand shape with your mouse. So make sure you're in the top view, because if you do it in any other view, let's say this one, press tab into edit mode while having this draw tool selected and you draw something, you will notice that it looks good from this side, but if you rotate it, it's in the Z axis or on all three axes. So we don't want actually that. Unless you want that, don't do it in this way, and make sure you have it on the cursor and not on surface. If you want to draw it on any surface, then only select this surface. So I'll just select all these and press X and vertices to delete these, and we'll work with this geometry that we have right here. So let's go into the geometry nodes tab. So select your object and press new to add a new geometry node network. We'll start by first filling this curve, then extruding it to make the base of the sandwich, which will be the ice cream. So press Shift A and add a fill curve node. Drop it right here and it will fill the face. Now next we'll add a extrude node. Press Shift A and extrude mesh to add an extrude mesh node. Now you'll see that we have some extrusion going on here, but if we go into the wireframe mode, you will see that it's not looking very good. First of all, we want to turn off this individual so it does not extrude all of these faces individually. The effect is not very much visible here, but you want to keep it to a full face and not on individual faces. So I'll turn off this individual, and also we are going to change the fill from triangles to n-gons to fix the top a little bit. Next we are going to reduce the offset to something like 0.4. Now let's go back into the object mode, and you will notice that the base of this face is gone. So we have the original face and it extruded upwards, but the original one is gone. But in case of doing it without geometry nodes, let's say we have a plane, mesh plane, and for example, if I go into edit mode and extrude it upwards, you will notice that it still has this bottom face, but in this case it's already gone. So what we need to do is combine the original one with this one. So let's add a join geometry node and plug it right here. Next we are going to take this fill curve mesh and add it into the join geometry. Now you'll see that the original geometry or the face is combined with the top face that is extruded. So now we have a whole complete shape. Now this looks good, but it's actually not. The normals on these faces are a bit messed up. So if I go into the overlays panel and turn on face orientation, you will see that this is flipped and these are correct. So the blue ones are correct normals and this one is incorrect normal. This indicates that this face should not be facing the camera, but the other one should be. So in case of this cube, you will notice that all of these are blue, which is because this is a closed surface or a closed volume. So if we zoom in enough to go inside it, you will notice that it's red on the inside and blue on the outside. So that is what we want with this also. So we are going to flip the normals, and we do that by adding a flip faces node. So press Shift A and enter flip and select flip faces and add it to this one. So now that is fixed. So let's delete this one for now. You can also click on this pin tab, so this node network stays here no matter what object you select. So right now it looks good that we have fixed the problem, but there's one more problem that we can't actually see. So what we need to do is combine these two into one mesh. So currently it's actually two meshes. One is this face and one is this one. we actually joined it, but there are duplicate vertices right here. So if you go into the wireframe mode, you will not see them, but there are double vertices right here. So you need to remember that some things you will have to find out by experiment. I found out this later when I was trying to scale this on the z-axis, so I know it now, but if you don't know it, you can always come back and fix it later. But we'll add the fixing node right now and just deactivate it to turn it on later. So press Shift A and add a merge by distance node and plug it here. Now you'll not notice anything visually, but it did actually merge the vertices that were duplicating here. So if you want to see the effect later, so you can click on this and press M to mute this node, and we will turn it on later. So now that the ice cream part is ready, let's do the biscuit. Let's turn off this face orientation for now and work with this geometry. So we are going to take this geometry after join geometry, but let's take this one after the merge distance, even if it's deactivated, and add a transform geometry node. And what we want to do is we want to move it up. So we will increase this value, and you will notice that nothing is happening because this is not connected to the output geometry. So we need to connect this also. So for that, add a join geometry node and plug it right before the group output. So let's connect this join geometry to this one. Now you'll see we have two geometries. So let's reduce this to something like this. So now if we go into wireframe mode, you'll see that this is connected perfectly, but actually we don't want to just eyeball it every time. We need the same distance that this is extruded by and move this by that distance. So what I mean is these two distances should be equal, the extrude and the translation, because if they are not, you'll see that the extrude mesh is going more outwards than this one. So we will have to adjust it multiple times manually. So we don't want that actually. So what we'll do is we'll add a value node and we are going to plug it into the extrude mesh. So I'll just copy this number and plug the value into the offset and paste the number here, so it's back to normal. So then what we are going to do is use this value in the translation. But if we do that, you will notice that it's translated in all directions, X, Y and Z. So to fix that, we need only the translation in Z direction, that is towards the upside. So what we are going to do is add a combine XYZ node and plug it right before this translation. Now you'll notice that this is translated towards the X, better visible in the wireframe mode. But we don't want that, so disconnect it from here and connect it into the Z. So now you will see that it translated it by an amount of this thickness. So if now we increase it, it will automatically increase and decrease by the same amount. Next, what we want to do is to scale this upper element so it's not equal to this one. So let's add a scale elements node and plug it here. Now if we change the scale, you will notice that it scales it in all directions and it's actually good. So let's scale it by something like 1.2. So now if we go into the face mode, now you will notice that we have a little problem here. So you will see there's a lip forming right here, because when we scale this element, let's just isolate this element for now. Let's remove this top one from the join geometry node and we will see it better. So now if you scale it, you will notice that this lip goes on increasing. It's not visible at 1, but if you scale it down, it's more visible because this and this geometry is not connected. This is why we needed this merge by distance node. So if you just turn it on right now by pressing M, you will notice that it's fixed because it takes the original geometry and merges the double vertices. So this is without it and this is with it. So this node was added for this purpose. So let's connect our original geometry back and scale it to a proper value of, let's say, 1.1 or 1.2. Now you'll notice that it does not look very good. So what we can do is, in the transform geometry node, we can scale it down a little on the z-axis. So let's make it 0.4. And now the good thing is, this will scale from this face, so it does not go weird. Now we are almost done, but we need one more similar face on the bottom as well, which will be the second biscuit. So what we can do is use this scaled element again into this geometry. So let's take a noodle out of here and add a transform geometry node and connect it to this join geometry again. Now to make it visible, I'll just decrease the Z, and it is almost done. But similarly for this one, we don't actually want to input the value manually here. So let's take this combine XYZ again and plug it into the translation. But we have an issue. You see that it translated it again from this distance to the upside on the z-axis by the same amount. So, but we actually want it to go in the opposite direction, that is the negative z direction. So what we need to do is turn this value into a negative value. So we will disconnect it from here, and we will take this value again, pull a noodle from here and add a combine XYZ again, plugged into Z, and connect the vector to the translation. But this time what we want to do is add a math node before the combine XYZ and set the value to multiply and value to -1. So what it does is take this value 0.4, multiply it by -1, so that is -0.4, and then run it through this combine XYZ, so the values are 0, 0 and -0.4, and then turns it into translation. So now it goes up and down by the same amount. So if we just extrude this value, so now if we just change this value for experiment, you will see that it's working perfectly. And also if we change the scale, it's also working perfectly. And if we change this value, the scale is still holding up and it's working perfectly still now. Now let's go back to a decent value. Let's say this one, and scaling to 0.4, and let's add materials. Now with materials, I've already set up two materials, the base and the ice cream. I'll show them in a minute, but let's add them first. So with geometry nodes, it's difficult to add materials because you cannot just go new here and select the material here and they won't show up. So what we need to do is add a set material node and plug it after the geometry and select the material from here. So add a set material and select your material. So now it will be applied. I actually selected the wrong one, so I'll select this one, and this is applied. Similarly, we need to add it for this and this geometry. So let's do one thing. Let's add another join geometry node and connect this geometry right here and disconnect it from here. Now the purpose of this is to make the material setting easier. If we don't add this, we will have to add a set material here and here, but if we add this, we can just add one here. So I'll select this node, press Shift D to duplicate and plug it right here. Now it gives the same material to this and this. So let's click this and change our material. And now we are done. So press 7 to go into top view mode, and if we go into edit mode now and select this, turn off the screencast keys, and if we select this draw mode, you can actually draw any shape and it will be turned into an ice cream sandwich. Now it still works if you're not in the top view, but it does not look very good. So make sure you're in the top view and it will be turned into an ice cream sandwich. So let's see the materials once and then we are done with this episode. So for the base of the sandwich, I used a noise texture into a color ramp plugged into the base color, which is just a basic noise setup. Adjust the color ramp position to give the material a better look. If you want the hex code, here are these. This is the hex code for the brown color, dark brown color 5E2C1E, and this is the hex code for this light color FFB166. I used another noise texture plugged into the same color ramp into a bump node and plugged it into the normal to give a little bit of bumpiness texture to the object. So the reason I'm using two different noise textures is that this one has a lot less scale and this one has a larger scale. That means this is a fine texture and this is a coarse texture, and it goes into a color ramp with change sliders to adjust the settings. And for the cream material, it's almost the same setup. I just changed these colors, so I just flipped it onto the other side. So this was the same material and I just flipped this color ramp like this, and now it's inverted, and this setup is almost the same. So that was it for this tutorial. The pond tutorial will be out soon, probably next week, so try this one out before that so that you get used to the filled curves and extruding it, and I'll see you in the next one.